facilities and engineering.
Oh, that too, okay.
And all that sort of, like, you know, buildings and stuff, and litigation and all sorts and all that stuff.
So where's your office, in Bar Harbor or elsewhere?
My office is right here,
Wherever he is, his office is.
but I have an office in Bar Harbor, one in Hartford, and
We have another minute or two.
My computer's.
I say 6 on my app.
Okay. Okay, we'll call the Tremont Planning Board meeting of July 27th to order at 6 p.m. Roll call. We have Brett Witham, Beth Gott, Jeff Young. Jeff, to say yes.
Yes.
Okay, because you're remote. Okay, thank you. And myself, Mark Good. We don't have Lawson Wilson. He did call in, right, to say that he wasn't able to make it. He's out of town. So I'll take a motion to excuse Lawson Wilson.
So moved.
Okay. How about a second there, Jeff? Since Brett beat you to the so moved.
Second.
Okay. Motion is second on the table to excuse Lawson Wilson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 4-0. Adjustment adoption of the agenda. I don't see a need to make any adjustments. Anybody differ?
You want to add the
Oh,
discussion letter.
oh, yeah, under other, yes, okay. I'll take a motion to add discussion of the Greg Johnson letter under other.
Do we have a copy of that letter?
I'll email it.
Yeah,
Jesse's going to email it to you right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'll second it. Motion second on the table to discuss the Greg Johnston letter under other. All in favor? Aye. You too, Jeff?
Yes. Aye.
4-0, okay. Minutes. I did notice, Brett, your last name spelled wrong everywhere on here.
Oh, dang it, wrong.
somebody stick an H in there.
Yeah. And the other thing is under old business B, discussion of draft campground changes. You voted, you were opposed, but it shows you as
Stevie?
abstaining, yes, 4-0-1.
I want my one up.
Okay, so Will, since you're the one that has the name and the vote, why don't, would you make a motion to amend the minutes?
Sure. I'll move to amend the minutes to correct the typo in my name, remove the H after the W, and to correctly reflect the vote on the
Old business B.
on old business B, to reflect that I voted no.
Okay, do I have a second?
Or second.
Okay, motion is second to pass the minutes as amended. All in favor?
Oh, wait a minute, Mark. I know.
Any discussion? Yes, sorry.
I know spelling's correct. What do you do on the vote thing? I didn't hear how that was.
Okay, under B, on
Yeah.
old business, discussion of draft campground changes. Brett voted in opposition, but the motion as written passed 4-0-1, indicating
Okay.
he abstained.
Thank you.
Case. Got me?
Yes.
Okay, you all set?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 4. Jan, did you get those changes? Okay, great. Okay, moving right along, new business. Remote participation policy discussion. Has everybody had a chance to look at the draft policy?
So I don't know if you're aware or not, but the select board adopted a remote participation policy at their last meeting. And it was pointed out after that it only applies to the select board. So I contacted MMA Legal to ask if the select board could do a blanket policy that covers all the boards and committees of the town. And the state's law that they just passed regarding the remote participation strictly prohibits one board from adopting a policy that covers other boards. It also goes so far as to prohibit town meeting from adopting a policy that covers all boards. So under the new law, every board must adopt its own policy. So another part of that law is that you have to hold a public hearing before considering and adopting a policy. So the select board did theirs. So if you guys want to consider a remote meeting policy, remote participation policy, you just need to schedule a public hearing to discuss that.
Okay, so we have two options. Either we don't adopt a policy, in which case everything has to be done here in person. Okay, if we adopt the policy, then we can conduct some business remotely in special circumstances.
Right.
As
it
detailed in
lays
the
out-
policy.
Right, in the policy, it lays out specifics for a reason why a member can't attend in person. If a member is allowed to attend remotely, then you have to give that option to the public. If all of you are attending in person, then there doesn't need to be a remote option.
And can you, in case some of the members didn't see the draft policy, can you
The
tell us
select
what
board.
those circumstances are?
I haven't seen it.
I don't know what I did with it. Mine.
Where do we get it?
Justin, did you send out the draft policy?
I didn't do a planning board draft one.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know if you guys had to
But
decide tonight.
he
if
did
you
send
wanted-
it out
Yeah, I got
with the
it.
selectmen.
Yes, I
They're
sent
all
it.
the board
Yes.
I
committees.
sent out the select
Yeah.
version.
And,
I'll pull it up.
Yes, that's right.
and that was basically just a draft from the MMA website, correct?
So it's fairly short.
Who knows, this all could change anyway in the next few weeks.
Mhm. Okay. So basically, it says, members of the body, which would be the board, are expected to be physically present for meetings except when not practicable, such as in the case of an emergency or urgent issue that requires the body to meet via remote methods, or an illness or temporary absence of a member that causes significant difficulty traveling to the meeting location. The chair or presiding officer of the body, in consultation with other members, if appropriate and possible, will make a determination that remote methods of participation are necessary in as timely a manner as possible under the circumstances. A member who is unable to attend a meeting in person will notify the chair or presiding officer of the body as far in advance as possible. Remote methods of participation may include telephonic or video technology, allowing simultaneous reception of information, and may include other means necessary to accommodate disabled persons. Remote participation will not be by text-only means such as email, text messages, or chat functions. The public will be provided a meaningful opportunity to attend via remote methods when any member of the body participates via remote methods. If public input is allowed or required at the meeting, an effective means of communication between the body and the public will also be provided. The public will also be provided an opportunity to attend the meeting in person unless there is an emergency or urgent issue that requires the entire body to meet using remote methods. Notices of all meetings will be provided in accordance with MRS 406. Notice will also identify a location where the public may attend the meeting in person. The body will not restrict public attendance to remote methods except in the case of an emergency or urgent issue. The body will make all documents and materials to be considered by the body available electronically or otherwise to the public who attend remotely to the same extent customarily available to the public who attend in person, provided no additional costs are incurred by the body.
So under this, someone who had to be out of town could actually participate remotely with notice. And there's no time frame for notice, as soon as possible.
As soon as possible.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if I go out to my driveway to get in my car and I have a flat tire 5 minutes before the meeting starts, we can meet remotely.
You could.
Okay.
Well, you could.
Yeah.
Everybody else would.
But I mean, it's not really feasible, right? You get other people. You're allowed to do that. I think I heard you say the public needs to be able to.
Yeah, well, everybody, yeah.
It sounds like if you have this policy, you probably have this plan having the remote option available for a meeting anyway.
Mhm.
Or you're gonna need to be able to pull that trigger.
Yeah. Which seems to be easy enough to do, correct? I mean, you did it in a matter of minutes tonight.
Mhm.
The
Is
only thing,
anyone else on here besides?
Yeah, there's 12.
I just
16.
raised the point though, I can't tell as I sit here who's even here.
that's true, yeah, and I don't know.
Not that it matters. We're not gonna say it, but, yeah.
So your fans out there.
But you can't tell, it's weird to try to.
Yeah.
do
No,
that.
I understand, and maybe there's some technological way to solve that,
Big
but,
screens.
yeah, big screen, but I think it
So how would
probably
they-
costs money. I don't know whether we could do
How
it.
would they respond? I mean, if they had a question, can they
Yeah.
ask it from?
They can, they're all muted, I believe they can unmute, depends on the setting, but they can also submit a chat. I actually have a chat.
Yeah, someone's saying, tell them to shut up.
It's not working.
I mean, I'll just say my gut, I mean, personally, I'd be inclined to, I think in-person meetings are just the way that the public discourse and government ought to be run. But I also feel like with this Delta thing going on, you kind of still kind of right now, it's just, feels like it would be forcing people to, maybe do something that could not be safe. I kind of feel like you gotta keep doing it, even though personally, I don't feel like it's the best.
Well, yeah,
Thing.
I think we have to adopt the policy. We don't really have a choice, but one question, can we add instead of just the chairman, town manager, or the town manager being notified? Because what happens if the chairman's going to be absent or something? It doesn't take that into consideration, or else the chairman isn't available right at that time.
You can make that change. Huge issue.
Does that make sense?
Incorporate that.
Other board members, what do you think?
I do feel that the one thing that this whole past year has brought forward is public participation has been greater since we've been able to have Zoom meetings, and more people are showing up at meetings, which I think is a good thing. And I'm just wondering how much leeway there is in the language in the what we're permitted to adopt, that we can adjust it maybe to have Zoom available for meetings, even though the planning board members may be there and present.
I think
mean remote for the public?
the draft policy is based on a statute.
That's correct.
It is. I mean, I can research it further before your public hearing. And see if there's.
I mean, do we have to adopt exactly the language that has been given to us by the state as to the policy? Or do
No,
we
you don't have to adopt it exactly. You just have to incorporate certain elements of it that are included in the law.
As long as it conforms to the statute.
Yeah.
I forgot
Do
the
you have a quote on, do you have a site on that?
It's Title I, something or other.
Yeah, it's gonna be in the admin stuff. Right at the beginning.
I think we should put together a draft and look at next meeting, and then decide what our statutes should look like, and then have the public hearing.
We're working against timeframe. This law goes into effect the end of the month, is it, Jesse?
Right.
Friday,
Friday.
yeah. So
We're gonna have
What month?
what's that?
End of what month?
a lot.
Today.
July.
I mean, this month, I mean.
In other words, no matter what we do, we will have to have a meeting without Zoom.
August
Yes,
10th.
our next meeting on the 10th has to be
In
Has to
person.
be.
in person, yes.
No. Why is that?
Because the ability to participate by remote methods was only allowed under the executive order by the governor, which expired June 30th, and those privileges were extended to July 30th.
So
Unless we adopt a policy.
When's our public hearing for the campground to be continued to?
It would be to.
We haven't
gotta
haven't
make a
decided on that yet.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. Yes, we have a schedule set up, I thought, unless we change it. Is it the 10th or the next meeting after that?
Currently it's the 10th, yes.
Okay, and
Yeah.
that was scheduled as a public, as on Zoom, wasn't it?
It was previously scheduled on Zoom, yes.
Yeah,
The letter that Greg sent,
I mean, they're looking to move that, anyway, Jeff. So that's not gonna happen, well,
You wanted to have your public hearing to adopt the policy.
we could have,
Not-
we could have the public hearing, that's interesting. On the 10th, to adopt the policy, it would need to be actually, I think, in person.
Mhm.
But we could then adopt the policy such that, assuming on the other part of the agenda, we move the hearing for the campground, that could be with Zoom. Which would probably be the best, and that would be
but only under certain circumstances.
only under the policy.
Yeah. Which means somebody has to be unable to make a meeting.
Well, doesn't it also include the circumstances in case of a pandemic as in the such as clause?
Well, I wondered the same thing, and from what I've seen, it doesn't specifically address that.
I thought specifically addressed that. It'd be nice if we had this in front of us before we discussed it tonight.
Yeah, I know, that'd be nice too. I don't see that.
Uh,
Is it on the Board of Selectmen website?
The remote policy they
Yeah.
adopted?
Yeah.
It should be.
So Jesse and Mark, this is Andy Hamilton. Can I just offer an observation as to the law on remote participation?
Mhm.
And so
Go ahead,
after
Andy.
July, okay, after July 30th, you have to have a policy in place. If you don't, then no member can participate remotely and the public can't participate remotely. So you have to, as Jesse said, have the public participation policy in place. As a couple of members have said, it's probably going to make sense for you. You're to determine, it's your call. But the recommendation, I think, is for August 10th. You hold a public hearing and decide that you want to allow for remote participation under the parameters provided by law. And just as a data point, Greg and I are going to be seeking a continuance of the public hearing until the 24th. So that the
We'll discuss
foundation-
that later. Andy, thanks a lot. Okay, that's what
So
you
it's just-
suggest, what we were
Yeah,
discussing.
it's important, Mark, that the foundation be laid on the 10th with the remote participation, because we've sensed that neighbors want the ability to participate remotely in any public hearing on the campground. That was my only observation.
Thank you, Andy.
It's LD 1831 is the state law that they just passed. HP 1273 LD 1831.
What are we gonna decide right here for that?
On to the
Yes, we
policy,
do.
Yeah,
and
So-
schedule a public hearing.
let's do that. I'll
make
take a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we, review and adopt a policy for remote meeting participation and with a public hearing for that to be on August 10th, 2021
At
at 6 o'clock,
where?
Harvey Kelly Room.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
Okay, motion is second on the table to schedule a public hearing on a proposed remote participation policy for the Tremont Planning Board on August the 10th, 2021 at 6 p.m. at the town office in the Harvey Kelly Meeting Room. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'd like to call for a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Okay, that was 4-0 too. Okay, thank you. Okay. Old business, continued discussion on campground light commercial changes for land use ordinance. I did ask for this to be put on the agenda. When we're making out the agenda, we weren't sure whether we're going to hear from James, and apparently we haven't. So he was looking into light commercial changes, or what he calls, what did he call it? I can't remember.
Small.
Yeah, and we didn't, at that meeting, we got hung up on the light commercial changes or definition of light commercial. And we didn't really discuss any possible changes to the standards for campgrounds. And if we're going to try to get something on the ballot in November, we need to basically make a decision tonight, right, Jesse? Or at the next meeting, the 10th, to get the selectmen for their last meeting in August.
You would need. Yes, you're too late. Convince them to hold a second meeting.
Which they've already agreed to do. So my question to the board is, do we want to proceed with anything right now? Any ideas? I had a couple of possibilities, and I'm not beholden to these, I'm throwing them out as ideas. One is an inspection by the CEO, annual inspection by the CEO of campgrounds, just to make sure everything's in compliance. Other towns have that. Maybe increasing buffering standards at some point, that's a possibility. Or more setting a minimum acreage for a campground.
Remind me, I know we've done a couple things so far. We have at least attempted to align the site plan ordinance and the land use ordinance, and I think that's going to happen, but there was a snafu hearing, whatever.
Right.
But when there was that snafu, there was also a piece, didn't we already do something with campgrounds?
Yeah,
already?
we did. We did change the standards, or the voters did at the
Okay.
May town meeting. Remember, we went from a 25 to a 50-foot setback.
And that was in May?
Yes,
Was this application pending at that time?
but they did have a 50-foot setback already. They had already decided to go with that.
The changes that were adopted at town meeting was the 50-foot setback, the section that says the campgrounds must be screened from all abutting areas, the inspection of fire pits by the fire chief, and placement of trash receptacles.
So that's already been
Pretty
done.
basic. That's already been done, yeah. And in some cases, the 50-foot setback, I think, was a good thing. It kept, I did some rough figuring of taking that 50-foot setback out of certain acreages, and then dividing the remaining square foot each by 5,000 square feet, which is each campsite. And I don't think you can do one on 1 acre anymore. We had 11 sites approved on 1.6 acres at one point. And that would be cut down as well. Where did I have that? So
Mark, you have a question about that? In the new adoption changes that happened in the last town meeting.
yes,
That made the 50-foot buffer. Did it explicitly state that the buffering areas would not count towards minimum density calculation? That, which you just said, was new language to me. I hadn't heard this said as somebody else, but I'm just curious if that point was clarified. I know it said the lot area, but I didn't know that the buffering was then subtracted.
I believe that's the way I read it, but I've been wrong before, Greg.
I'm not sure. I just I was interested, why Paul was I was following that.
The area is intended for placement of a recreational vehicle, tent, or shelter in utility and service buildings and accessory uses associated with camping activities such as fire pits, clotheslines, and picnic tables shall be set back a minimum of 50 feet from the exterior lot lines, 100 feet horizontal distance from the normal high water line of the Great Pond, and 75 feet horizontal distance from the normal high water line of other water bodies, tributary streams, or the upland edge of a wetland.
I think what Greg is pointing to is paragraph 1
Yep.
at the top.
Right.
It doesn't say
Shall
that
not
it's
be
to be
included.
subtracted. It's not including roads and driveways for each site.
Yeah.
And water, land below the water line. So the setback area would still be calculated in the 5,000 square feet required space. Would make your lot area for the campsite smaller,
There you go.
but it wouldn't necessarily change the number of sites that you can have. It would just change the location.
Increase in buffering.
Yeah.
But didn't make a further deduction in, what would you say, minimum.
Right.
Your denominator, I guess you could call it.
It could physically, the buffer could physically crowd out a site, but it wouldn't,
That's what the lot configuration.
right, it wouldn't change the lot coverage calculation.
I was just curious how that came through, because I remember following and seeing it, reading it, and that struck me as different. Not that I was focused on it, it just struck me as different than what I understood.
So, I mean, I asked that because, I mean, other than the CEO officer, I think you said going on a yearly, check, which I think you probably do anyway. I don't think you need to,
I don't think they do.
We don't,
but you could, right?
I mean, you could,
So you're talking about a rule that would direct them to do
Right.
yeah, they'd be required.
that. I mean, that makes sense to me, but the other things, it just feels like, I feel like we've kind of already took a bite
Been
of
through
the
that?
apple.
Yeah.
And I sound like a broken record, but we do have a public survey out there that we're hoping to get some feedback on.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Two other campgrounds that would be involved in that too. The other campgrounds would have to have the CEO inspect
Yeah.
or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's, makes sense.
I don't have an issue.
You could get kind of, because you could get some mission creep, if you will.
Maybe you'll have some help by then.
There could be a lot of things going on that we don't know about.
You
Yeah.
know, because once they kind of throw things up and the wood grows in, no one really,
You brought up the survey. Are we hearing anything from it? Are they coming in?
They are coming in. Last update I heard from Lawson was, which was a week or so ago. There'd been 63 responses online, which I think in 2011 wasn't the total response like 85 or something? I thought I read that.
What's our deadline? Well, what's wrong meeting.
September
Yeah.
6th, I think.
Uh,
They're dropping them off.
I know, I gotta
curious.
call, I've got to talk to the Allender.
Yeah.
They're gonna put a story in the paper.
You're welcome.
Yeah, did you call, say, yeah? I'm gonna-
No, she asked me, I who to talk to.
Yeah, thanks. I know she's been tagging me in Facebook and looking at that. I gotta get back.
Anyway, okay, let's get back on the campground thing. I think the inspection is a good idea. Any other members have any ideas? Jeff?
Jesse, on the revision that we tried to get through before, but didn't work because of the public hearing requirement. Article 5, subsection T. Were we eliminating the word campgrounds in the exception of that?
Are you in site plan?
Yeah, no, land use ordinance.
Well, land use went through. Site plan's the only one that didn't go through.
Okay. Then I would suggest if we'll be looking at campgrounds, we look at section T of Article 5 and see if we should have the word campgrounds removed from the exception to the applying the restrictions that are set forth in business uses in SID.
Where are you, in site plan or land use
Land
ordinance?
use.
Land use,
Section C,
section, Article 5, Roman numeral 5, T, business uses. So page 30, 29, something like that.
Are you in your lower left, are you in version 2021-55?
No, I'm using the old version because I didn't know
oh,
which was
probably
adopted.
the problem. We have a new version.
We adopted it in the new
Yeah,
version.
we adopted. I didn't know if we're okay.
So we're all set there.
Yes.
Okay.
We discussed a lot, way back when about a lot minimum, and we never got anywhere with it. So I'm assuming we don't care anymore at this point.
You know, by the buffer, well, you know, I don't know. I think what we're getting into now, is to me, you start getting into the details of these things, and you start thinking about, okay, whether is it a tent or is it an RV location? It makes a difference.
Yeah,
And I feel like, you know, if you've got, if you really want to get into the detail of how these things ought to be managed, I think you have to look at the relative use of, you know, whether it's a building or a yurt or a platform or a tent or an RV park. Because I think 10 RV parks on a piece of land are different than 10 tents. And if you just kind of say, you know, you have a minimum lot size, if someone plugs the thing full of RVs, it's different than if they put a bunch of tent platforms on there. That's just my view. Because these RVs now are like rolling houses.
right. 48 feet long, Class A's.
And you look at, I mean, you look at some of the feedback, and I get it, you know, the road over there, I mean, there's a lot of RV hookups. So I just think it's different. I don't know. I mean, I haven't studied it, but I feel like, you know, we've talked about the setback now. We've got a higher buffering standard. Some of that takes care of itself. And if you're going to go to a minimum lot size, I don't know. No.
But shouldn't you have like a site plan from the people so that you could see what's?
See it. Yeah, I know. You've got to, I don't know. Let's sit here right now.
Anybody else? I don't want to prolong this discussion.
But you know where I'm going at, though? I mean, I feel like the RVs are,
Well, okay, let me ask you this.
yeah.
Why do you think RVs are different than tents if we take out the traffic impact?
Well, if you take out the traffic impact,
Yeah, okay. You still have noise, you still have smoke.
yeah, I think you have more. I just feel like you have more with an RV because you can have more people. You know, whereas I just feel like the people that are living out are not as, they're not, it's just
Have
different.
you seen some of these glamping tents?
Well, then now you're getting into the yurt scenario.
Yeah.
And those kind of scenarios. I'm talking about people like where my campground is, where I live right next to them, by the way, and have no problems. They actually are in tents, like an LL Bean tent.
Yep.
And like
Well,
one.
they have
little car.
RVs there too.
There are not very many though, I don't think. I don't
I
there's very
think
many.
30.
You know what? And if there are, then I
25
have
or
no
30.
problem with that
25
either.
or 30, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about the density. I mean, you have an idea, you have a thought on.
I didn't. I know some towns do set that. I mean, I've seen it range from 2 to 20.
Maximum number of
Minimum lot
Okay.
size.
Lots of minimum lot size, yeah.
2 acres.
Yeah.
To 20 acres.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
I mean, I can
Lemoyne,
definitely see
Lemoyne
what-
is 20
I mean, you
acres.
definitely don't want people throwing like 1 acre,
Well, that's
you know.
my point.
And I
Yeah,
don't think they
I mean,
can do that now, though, right? With this,
well, my figures were definitely wrong, so you can.
They can.
Yeah.
You need 5,000 square feet per campsite. So an acre is 43,000. Can't count the roads. But, I mean, you can have a couple campsites on an acre.
I don't know. I guess I haven't thought about it. That forces people into larger, I guess, larger operations.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, the more acres you have as a minimum, the more campsites you could develop on there. But the other side is probably less developable land. You know, you have to find large parcels in order to
Do it.
do it, yeah. Save it for another day. Jeff, I haven't heard you weigh in.
No, I think we save it for another day and look for a couple more inputs from our attorney and all of us give some thought to what restrictions we think might be useful.
Okay. What do you think about having the CEO's annual inspection?
Absolutely. Yes, I think it should be done.
I think that's a no-brainer.
Beth?
I agree with that.
Okay. Jesse?
My only input is, do you want to put the land use ordinance before voters in November and have a special select board meeting for that one change? Or do you want to just put that on for May with whatever else you come up with between now and May?
We can probably do that on May, right?
Yeah, we probably,
Probably
yeah,
not
we
worth
we
it.
can wait till May, I guess.
Should do it for May.
Anybody object to that?
It isn't like we're losing anything, right? 'Cause it's annual.
Right. Still be in this.
So we don't need to make a motion on that now. Okay, good. Okay, we all set there? Anybody else have anything to say? Okay, hearing nothing, we'll move on. Other. Katie Wilderness Lodge continuation. Before we get into that, though, I want to ask, does anybody have a bias or conflict of interest in any business concerning the Katie Wilderness Lodge?
Well, right now, my company is doing work there on the present site. So I suppose I would have a conflict of interest.
You've also you're on the record as sending a letter in support of the
Yeah.
campground.
Yeah.
And so that would, according to our attorney, would be bias. And there's also a contract or well, it's not actual contract. It's for the trash disposal of the Katy Wilderness. There's all that. So if we don't have you recuse and we allowed you to vote, one of the things that the attorneys in opposition, if it goes to appeal, which I'm assuming it probably will do, is say that there was bias and conflict of interest in the board.
Yeah.
They wouldn't just void your vote, they would void the votes of the
I was
whole
told
board.
this before.
Yeah.
I even,
So I think what I'll do is ask for,
I'm just gonna say something. One of the things that just bothers me about what just happened right now is that I didn't hear any of this from our lawyer. So I think and I appreciate what you just said, Mark, but I feel like, when these statements are gonna be made to other board members, we all ought to know all that. 'Cause I have no idea what we said or what lawyer said what to you or what.
okay. It wasn't a lawyer that said it to me. It was the opinions of our attorney in the letter she sent to all board members right there. Here's the state
That's fine,
statute.
but is it a specific finding to Ms. Gott? Or is it just a general?
It's a general.
It's in general, yeah, but,
Okay, but so, okay.
okay, here's a contract proposal for Katy Wilderness Lodge, okay?
Okay, where did this come from?
It came from the Canadian Wilderness Lodge materials they sent us. There's also,
But I just think you've got to be careful. If you're saying that a lawyer told us and concluded that she's a conflict, I haven't seen that opinion yet. But look, if you're going to ask her, because the way the rules work, as I recall, it's up to the member, not us, to decide whether they have a conflict. That's how that works, because Lawson, I say here, one of my first meetings, Lawson, because of his interactions with Kevin Buck and Marjorie, the question was raised as to whether he had a conflict. We didn't tell him whether he could serve or not. He had to make that decision.
Beth just admitted she had a conflict.
That's fine, but what the difference is, she makes that decision. You don't get to tell her that she has a conflict because an attorney said that. That's not what any of this says.
She should say whether or not she has, it.
Exactly.
And then you all have
It's just
to,
a process.
And then we
you
vote.
all have to take a vote on whether or not you agree or disagree with her.
It's just a process point. It's how this has to play. We can't, you have to be careful, Mark, with telling people that a lawyer said you have a conflict. And if there's an appeal, we're going to get sued and it obviates all the other votes.
Did
That's not
I,
actually,
okay, did I say that an attorney said she had a conflict or an attorney said that is a conflict? Because there's a difference there.
well, I don't think the attorney said, oh, I don't think the attorney has actually looked at any of this and concluded on the facts that this rises to a conflict. The attorney has set forth a letter that says when there could be a conflict, it's now up to Beth to decide based on that letter and the facts here whether there is a conflict. That's the way our rules work.
Anybody else?
That should state whether or not she does, which she's made. And then
And
one
I'm
of,
not, it's
one
just,
of
again, it's a
you,
process point.
one
No.
of you needs to make a motion.
How do you handle it if somebody has a conflict and they don't admit that they have a conflict?
You can. I
The
believe
MMA manual has a big section on it.
I read
you
it.
can raise.
Doesn't
the
say much.
issue.
You can probably raise the issue with the board.
Yeah, and take a vote. It has to be up to the board,
It
whether or
goes to the
not.
Board of Selectmen.
No, I think
No, it's the
It
Board
goes
of.
to us, yeah.
Well,
Point taken. Okay, point taken, okay.
But I was told that when I came and filled out the paperwork, that there was a chance that I wouldn't be able to vote on anything on the campground because I had sent the letter in and I had openly and for it. So I knew that ahead of time, so I had no problem doing that.
Okay,
So you, but I
Move
hear
on.
what you're saying is you're going to recuse yourself.
Yes.
yes. So we need to take a
To
vote
keep the
on that.
peace.
And I apologize if I was out of line in any way.
And so I think we would move to accept her recusal. So moved.
We have a second? Second. So we have a motion second on the table to accept Beth Gott's recusal from all business going forward this board involving Katy Wilderness Lodge. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Jeff?
Aye.
Okay, 3, and I'm assuming you're abstaining, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay,
Maybe we could put that in the paper. Oh, Harbor got slammed last week, Fremont the week before.
So we have the other.
What was the vote, Mark?
now we're,
Mark, what was the vote?
pardon?
What was the vote? I didn't hear everyone.
Know the vote.
301.
301.
Thank you. 3.
Okay, so now we're at other. And Greg is asking us to, everybody have a copy of the letter?
Yes, I got mine. Thank you.
Okay. He's asking us once again to continue the public hearing. Correct, Greg? You want to
Yeah,
explain
so I
this?
can explain a little bit. First, I wanted to touch base earlier on the whole public participation and dates and how they may align with the policy. Our goal with them to get outside of your format to encourage more public participation. We set up Zoom meetings to make sure people who are remote could be in. And that's been our process all along. So I just want to make sure that that's clear and we encourage, we want people involved. We had a really productive neighborhood meeting where we met a very large group.
Can you speak up, Greg? Some of us can't hear you that are remote.
Come up a little closer, Greg.
It's on
Copy on
the-
the computer.
It's on the computers. Chair up.
Come to the witness.
Yeah.
So you can show up.
Raise your right hand.
Whose microphone? So we encourage a lot of
public participation by how we organize the meetings. We notified abutters by mail. We sent, notices to their attorneys to make sure people could be involved. And so we think through that process, it's been very fruitful. And we committed to some of the abutters and stakeholders that we would return to meet with them again and say, okay, we've listened to you. And we had that follow-up meeting just a week ago, okay? And I think there were some positive results of that meeting, and to garner that up into a package that's presentable to the board, we're just requesting that we extend to the public hearing, but committing to get you the information by the 10th for the 24th. And so that's part of the request. The board, the ordinance requires that it's mutually extendable.
So you'll have something to us by the 10th.
Correct. We have 2 weeks to look at it and understand what those modifications might be, so that we're prepared to discuss it in an open format at the public hearing.
And will that be a whole new plan?
No, it won't be.
No.
You'll find that it's a significantly reduced plan, maybe a third of the count to where we started. And I think we addressed a lot of things like smoke, vehicular traffic, and a lot of those things. It's not a different plan, but it's drastically reduced.
If you're okay on 2 procedural items, Mark, I just wanted to make sure you and the board heard 2 procedural things that Greg and I think are important to bring forward. One is, we would like, if the board agrees, it's your call, that the public hearing on Acadia Wilderness Lodge, that's a continuation, be specifically noticed for public hearing on August 24th. That's our first request procedurally. The second is that you hold off trying to make any determination as to whether this is a modification to an existing application, a pending proceeding before you, or it's a new application. We don't believe it's a new application, but we don't think you can determine that as a board until you actually have materials before you that Greg will submit by the 10th of August. Those are the 2 procedural requests.
So a concern I have is, if we're having a public hearing, how is the public going to know about this new plan?
The submittal will be to the town office by the 10th of August. And because we had a very careful process not to bias or have any ex parte communication with the planning board, which we're obligated by law to do, the public has generally got knowledge of what the plan is. We've reviewed it carefully at the last neighborhood meeting. Now it's for the board to review. You'll have it as soon as August 10th, and you'll have it 14 days before the public hearing before the board. But the public has seen the revised plan.
Jesse, does that give time for the attorneys for the opposition to take a look at this and respond?
Your motion previously was that we received it 14 days and we received their response.
7 days, okay, yeah, so I thought, okay. Any questions, comments from the board?
I have a question. I believe Andy Hamilton said the public's already seen the plan. Is it all the details of the usual plans, or is it a concept of what the new plan will look like?
Great question, Jeff. It is a concept plan, and that's all we'll be seeking the review of the board on August 24th. If the board, as the public has begun to, salutes that plan, then we'll go to detailed engineering. But Greg will need time from the date we move forward. And some of the comments in the chat are suggesting not everybody's seen a concept plan. That's fine. Everybody will have it by the 10th of August. And it's all it is a sketch plan. And that's all we'll be presenting on August 10th is a concept sketch plan. Is that correct, Greg?
It is, because if you recall some of the timeframes for how we solidify some of the design and the elements of that. And we want to, I guess the process lays out that the board is involved, the stakeholders are involved, and I think that we need to return to that process so that we can complete it. And so we have a plan. It's been vetted with the neighborhood pretty thoroughly. And now we're back into being in front of the board, and that's our request.
How does the concept plan differ from what you're going to present later on?
Thank you, Mark.
Not significantly. I think that you guys, if you're giving us the benefit of the doubt of how we have gone the extra mile to have involvement, we're trying to be inclusive of the board in that involvement, that it's not going to be significantly different. We have committed to the stakeholders that this is our plan. We didn't, as we said at the stakeholder meetings, we didn't discuss this as moving by inches, we moved by miles. We feel we're really there. And we also, though, want to be prudent in how we carry that through with the board. And so I don't feel it's going to be significantly different at all, because we've committed and have, I feel like, a productive dialogue in which a format that isn't provided by this board. I'll tell you that a lot of towns have required neighborhood meetings. We do them all the time. And by going through that, I think we've got a better plan. Our clients have worked really hard to meet it. And I think it's time for us to engage the board too, but the plan is not going to be significantly different as we work through the details.
Can you briefly explain how it is going to differ?
I explained to you already that it's about a third of the size from
Be
100.
more specific, please.
Yeah, I would say a large retained open space on the property, going from 154 down to 54 sites, eliminating the potential of any RVs on site. So we're talking modifications, moving some of the lighter stuff up there and eliminating some of the things that were contentious with the butter. So I think that modifying that plan to eliminate some of the issues that we heard, I think is where we're going. And we're simply asking for two things, as Andy reiterated, is the opportunity to extend, to prepare that information, which we just completed last week, to the board, because it's a format and a submittal, but also that, the discussion of whether or not it's a new or modified plan be there when you can have all the facts in front of you. It's just an informed decision. We're asking for the opportunity to give the board evidence, information on a plan so we can make informed decisions. That's what tonight's about.
Board members?
The concern I have, Greg, is we went through the usual checklist of the original plan for completeness. And how much of that checklist becomes applicable on your, we looked at a lot of stuff to go through that checklist, what you'd filed. How much of that is going to be salvageable and understandable with your new filing if it's dramatically different?
I'd love to answer every one of those checklist points now, but I think if you give us the opportunity that we're requesting tonight, your curiosity will be cured and we can get to those substance. I mean, basically, we're asking for time to react from what we've done as a lengthy process and productive process with the abutters. That's our request. If we want to get into more substantive review tonight, we'd like to have all of our counsel and all of our design team here.
We're not asking for that at all. I'm really, again, it's like a concept of a concept. You said you're going to be filing a concept change, but that, from what you briefly described, and I don't need more tonight, but from what you briefly described, sounds like a lot of the other details would be dramatically changed as well. And what you will be filing by the 10th, will that include how it impacts what we've previously seen?
So let me suggest a process, because I think folks may be misunderstanding in light of what you typically do, what we're proposing now. We're not going to be coming back to you with material on the 10th for a public hearing on the 24th with a completed, fully designed application. What we needed to do was make a major pivot. And I want this board to give an applicant the very opportunity you want the applicant to have, which is to listen to the public and make a major pivot. We made a major pivot, Jeff, Mark, Brett, all board members. And we want the opportunity to bring the concept to you because you are the municipal review authority. You decide whether or not we get approval to move a project forward. So we want to just have the grace of updating you as to the concept plan and what's evolved. I think you'll be pleased that we listen to the neighbors. and we listened in part to the questions that you heard with the prior steps. Then we need to go to completeness review once Greg has the opportunity to do the engineering associated with the concept plan. It's a different plan, but it doesn't mean it's a new application. It's a pending proceeding with a modification. We don't have to determine that tonight, though. We can defer that question until the 24th, when you'll have a legal advisor, you'll have a public hearing, and you'll have a plan in front of you. It will be a concept plan that will then have to ripen into a completeness review at another meeting, and then a final review at a later meeting. But none of what I've heard convinces me that you're obligated to make the new application versus modification to an existing application decision. I will tell you right now, we're going to hold to the position that we should have done what we did, and we have the lawful right to do what we did without getting kicked back to a new application and starting all over again. But you ultimately make that decision, but you need material in front of you in order to make that decision. Because all you have in front of you as a planning board is what we had previously filed. You don't have the new concept plan. We would have been engaged in ex-parte communication with the board if we had drawn you into neighborhood meetings. So I'm just saying, I think it makes sense for us to do a 3-step going forward. On the 10th for the 24th, we do a concept review to just get you up to speed. Here's what we're talking about for the concept of the project. And both Cindy Orcutt and Greg Johnston wanted the opportunity to update you on the concept side. James and Kenya wanted that opportunity, just update the board, bring you up to speed with where we are. Then schedule it for a subsequent completeness review, then schedule it for a subsequent substantive review. Have I got that cadence right, Greg?
I do, and I think I can comment on how much it goes forward. A lot of it does go forward. Geographically and how it's orientated, I think a lot of it resonates with it before, but it also is, I think, addresses a lot of the comments and questions. And I kind of find it, a little bit, if there's a process laid out and an applicant of the town or taxpayers is requesting the opportunity of time and to give information so people can make thoughtful decisions, and there's so much of resistance to even allowing exceptions of new information or information that informs a decision, it starts to not sit well. I'm just saying that very publicly. That our request to inform the board of the process we've gone through is what we're here to do. And the resistance in that is a little bit concerning.
The
Board?
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'd give the opportunity, man. If you take a step back and just look at this big picture, they proposed a project, a lot of pushback from that. We can argue about whether, some of that, those letters and some of that public opinion, ultimately renders the project one that can't move forward. I don't know. Sounds like we're not going to reach that decision. But they basically have gone out. I didn't attend the meetings, but we've heard they've met with the public there twice now, have feedback, and I think you said a third. What did you say? 100 and down to 50?
55.
55 from 155.
No RVs.
No RVs. I mean, that's kind of what we want people to do. It feels like, and you got to give them an opportunity to do that. Like, and if we move forward though, and it turns out we get another 300 letters that say this is ridiculous, we didn't agree, then we know that's how people feel about it.
Okay, do you feel that if we continue that public hearing on the 24th, that's the end of the public hearings?
No, I don't believe.
Okay, okay, so we could then continue and have further public hearings after we get an actual plan, not a concept plan, a complete plan.
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
certainly the public can weigh in with letters of support or opposition, just as they have all along.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I think in the realm of land planning and how it goes, this process is afforded in a lot of places, and we've had to step outside the lines to make it happen. And I think the result is good, and we're looking forward to being able to share that with the board.
I'll take a motion unless somebody has anything else to say.
I'd like to just clarify a little bit, and I don't want this viewed as resistance. I want to look, we're a planning board, we're supposed to help you plan. So what I'm trying to say is that you're going to come in with a concept, and at some point we have to make a determination whether this merits a new filing or not. And so what I was really trying to say is how much material will we have prior to make that decision before you go to your next step? Did that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It
Wait
makes
and
sense to
see.
me.
I guess I understood it then, understood it now, and we're trying to respect.
In your timeline, you will have sufficient information other than just the concept to make the determination that, yeah, we can roll along with your initial application or say, no, new one's going to be needed.
I don't know if I can predict how you're going to view the information I submit, Jeff. We had several completeness hearings to get to completeness, so I'm not going to step outside to predict how that's going
You
to
had
unfold.
two.
Yeah, two.
Okay.
I also think
You
the
admitted that
question,
you didn't have all the information yourself, so.
if I could be recognized briefly on a quick point. I also view the question of a new application versus modification of an existing application for purposes of applying any new ordinances or amendments to ordinances as a legal question for which the board will need their lawyer to be present, because we'll want to brief both the board and its counsel on why we think we have the ability to reduce the scale of a plan and still go forward as an existing application. If that right's ever taken away, you're going to chill the interest of any applicant to do exactly what we did. So we would like to do all this on the 24th, particularly if the board's attorney can be present.
I mean, I agree with that. I mean, I think it would be, we'll have this discussion when we do, but it would be odd, I think, for the board to say, to put an applicant in the position where they have to choose between moving forward with an application they really don't want, and it sounds like maybe they've listened to the public and they don't want it. Moving forward with that, moving forward with an application that's a reduced application that they work with the public on, and then have us say, well, that's a new one. You're subject to some rules that make that application irrelevant now and you can't move forward. I mean, that just seems like it puts people in a really, it just doesn't sound like an equitable outcome, but we'll get there, I suppose. We'll get there.
Anything else, board? Somebody want to make a motion?
See, but it's basically just to continue forward the public hearing on August 24th. And
Why don't you add that that we need to have the concept plan in
yeah,
by the
concept plan by
10th.
August 10th.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I will move that we move the applicant's public hearing to August 24th, provided that they provide us with a concept plan on or before August 10th of 2021.
and we have to set a time, right, Jesse? And
Six normal time, normal place.
yeah, and how about Zoom? We can't do it by Zoom unless somebody is unable to make it because for one of the reasons under the remote participation policy, correct?
August 10th, we cannot do by Zoom, period.
Yeah, we know that, yeah.
So August 10th is in person, and I think we got to deal with August 24th when we.
No, I'm
August
just
10th.
thinking about that motion to
Yeah.
continue it until the 24th.
I think we could say that that we are permitted to have Zoom meetings after our meeting on August 10th and make a proviso within the motion.
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
Couldn't we word the amendment to the motion so that we can have it by Zoom, provided August 10th gives us the ability to have Zoom meetings under the circumstances set forth in what we pass on August 10th?
Okay, I understand what you're saying now.
Yeah, so reading this, I'll move that we.
Hold on, one more second. We've been holding the public hearings at 5. Do we want to continue that?
Yes.
What do you think, Jesse?
probably would.
That's good.
You like 5?
Five's good.
What's your bedtime?
2 and 3 hour meetings, depends.
So the 24th is at 5, but the 10th at 6,
Yeah.
6 PM? I'll move that we continue the public hearing in the current matter till August 24th at 5 PM, providing for remote participation, providing that first, on August 10th, we receive the applicant's concept plan, and second, on August 10th, the board votes and adopts a policy for remote participation in order to facilitate remote participation at the August 24th meeting. So they get all that? Okay. And
Do I have a second, Jeff?
Second,
Okay. I don't know if I can recall all that. We have a motion and second on the table to continue the public hearing for Acadia Wilderness Lodge until August 24th at 5 PM, providing that we have received the plan by August 10th, and that we have adopted the policy for remote participation that might allow for Zoom participation in the meeting, something to that effect. Is that close enough?
works.
Okay.
That works. Yeah, we'll get it.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll take a vote. Yes. Jeff?
yes.
Okay, 3-0.
Thank you, folks. Bye.
By the 10th there, Greg.
I'll see you on the 20th. Maybe on the 10th.
Yeah.
That means in person.
Okay.
I don't think you need a motion on August.
To set the date?
Just have it to them. It's at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
In person.
We get 5 here. Okay, you don't want a motion on that, huh?
I don't think.
Hey,
necessary.
one
You
more.
Set the public hearing for the.
Oh, that's right, yes. CEO search. What's going on there?
The search committee has a meeting tomorrow.
Okay,
Hopefully have some update for you.
okay, good enough. Anybody have anything else? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
I'm bored here.
Jeff,
Second.
Motion second on the table to adjourn. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Thanks, everybody.